This is the Jocko Underground podcast, number 48, sitting here with Echo Charles.
Yes, sir.
And was thinking through sort of, let's call it the lifespan of the podcast that we do, called the Jocko Podcast. Mm-hmm. And there was a little while in the beginning, and someone asked me about this the other day, there was a little while in the beginning where I was considering, instead of doing it once a week, doing it like once every 2 weeks, maybe even once a month. And we sort of talked about that. We kind of broached that topic a little bit on the podcast itself. And I think that was me kind of trying to socialize that idea a little bit with the people.
Yeah.
Of saying, hey, this is not a real sustainable workload of the amount of effort that it takes to put into doing the podcast. And by the way, doing this podcast, doing the Jocko podcast and this podcast and the Unraveling podcast and the Warrior Kid podcast, like all these podcasts, they're not really my primary job. So there's people that have the primary thing that they do with their life is do a podcast, but this isn't really.
Oh, like other people who do podcasts.
Other people that do podcasts, like that's what they do in their life is they do podcasts. That's kind of it. Mm-hmm. Which is cool. This is one portion of what I do, and the workload is not like, oh, one podcast a week was a lot, I don't know if I can handle it. It was that one podcast a week plus the bunch of other things I have going on. It didn't seem like it was sustainable. And so I was kind of, socializing the idea with the people of like, hey, we're maybe thinking, well, the feedback was not good from the people. They were like, no, hell no. Mm-hmm. The first person I told about it was a guy, was I was working with through Echelon Front. And he was like a big listener to the podcast. And I don't know how deep we were. We maybe were like 50 deep or something like this. Mm-hmm. But when I started to tell him, I was like, hey, we're thinking about going to once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month. He was like, I don't know if that's a good idea. He was saying it as if I was cutting off oxygen to people. So that made me rethink it. Some of the feedback we got. But yeah, the workload is tough because there's no staff. There's no one like helping to prep. There's no one doing any back research or anything like that. And so we just kind of stuck to it, And then after a little while, after like another probably 50 podcasts, I said to myself that the discipline that was imposed upon me by forcing myself to do this thing was hugely beneficial. It was making me read more. It was making me write more. It was making me think through things more. It was making me question myself and what I knew or what I thought I knew. So essentially, there's a lot of things that I've thought about and put out that I never would have put out if I hadn't have been squeezing on my brain to put it out. Yeah. There's a lot of books that I wouldn't have read and wouldn't have known anything about if I wouldn't have been saying, hey, I owe a podcast. So therefore, I have to read this book. Because otherwise, maybe I'd be, watching Netflix. Yep. and eating popcorn in front of the television for 4 hours. But no, I'm reading a book for 4 hours. Mm-hmm. What am I doing on a Sunday? I'm reading a book. What am I doing on a Saturday evening? I'm reading a book. What am I doing Saturday day? I'm reading a book. What am I doing Monday afternoon? Oh, I'm prepping. So the benefit that's given me has been great to put myself in a position where I kind of have to do this stuff. And I think right now we're going to keep pushing. Now, we, explore some other topics that interest me. But yes, there are other topics in the world that I'm interested in and that have influenced me and that I've learned from besides just war. Now, war obviously is my primary mode of thinking. Is that weird?
Well,
a little bit weird.
Yeah, for the normal person.
If I'm gonna make a comparison, I'm almost always gonna go to war. I'm almost always going to think about some kind of war, because the comparison is like, okay, here's an example. We're gonna be able to see the example very clearly, because it's gonna be a life and death scenario. This is gonna be a pressure leadership situation. Like, war is good for that, and that's why I kind of think that way. But I also have gotten things from things that aren't war, from other aspects of life. From jiu-jitsu is another huge one. But, you know, from surfing, from playing music, from listening to music, from other activities and other things and other people in life that I've met along the way. So, you know, maybe some people will be like, I don't want to hear about that stuff. And that's okay, right? That's okay. I understand. There's going to be some people that just want to hear about war. Cool. That's cool. Maybe we'll make some podcasts that they might not want to listen to. You know, we've had some musicians on here. We've had a photographer on here. We've had business people on. We've had some other people on the podcast, but it's okay, because I think if I'm starting to do something that I'm not, or if I'm chasing something that I'm interested in, then I'm happy about it. Yeah. And I pursue it, and I'm going to learn more. And if I learn something, here's the cool thing: just like a book, if I pick up a book to do the podcast on, and I get 20 pages into the book, and I'm like, this is not going to get me anywhere. It's not going to. I have nothing to pass on to anybody from this. Then I'm not doing it. Well, if I decide to think about doing a topic, and I decide, hey, you know what? Maybe this isn't like, there's nothing to learn here. There's no broad lessons for the people. I'm not putting it out. So, I think we just keep driving. We will keep driving down this road. We don't know what's up ahead. I legitimately don't know what's up ahead as far as topics, as far as like subject matter, as far as human beings that we bring on or that come on. I don't know. I don't know where it ends up, because I'm not sure where the road goes, but it has been a long, strange trip this far.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the good, and this is me speaking from an audience member perspective, and a fan, where, you know, there's a lot of interesting books, and, you know, whether they be about war or not, there's a lot of interesting people, whether they be military people, present, past, or not. But I think what I'd always really enjoy or learn from, or both, is kind of your take on all of it, where, you know, Colder Than Hell, right? Cool, good book. You know, I don't know that I would read that book just on my own, as if you didn't exist. I don't know. But hearing it from you, yes, of course, yes, made it like, oh, that's interesting and, you know, heavy and like all this stuff. But what I really was a fan of was your take on it. And the fact that I could, or someone, I mean, in this case, it's me, where I could ask questions to clarify, or what do you think about this element of that? Or how does this apply to you or me or whatever? Like, I feel like that part really has the value of it, which kind of goes in line with kind of what you were saying. But even more than that, and rewind back to you talking about doing it once a week, it kind of put in my head where, you know how, you know, in the beginning when we first started, a lot of people would, and I really mean it, a lot of people would ask me, hey, like, how do I start a podcast? So much where I put a page on the website saying, this is how you start a podcast, here's all the equipment or whatever, so I didn't have to, you know, answer the questions all the time. So let me ask you, like, how hard is it to do this podcast? Like, as far as hardness goes, I know this is a very specific podcast where you got to read and do all that stuff, but like, just consider that maybe it wasn't that much work for you, but just, I don't know, maybe arbitrarily just sort of think, generally speaking, how hard is it to do a podcast doing it versus like seeing it from the outside, what you'd expect?
It's probably a lot harder than it seems like it's going to be. Yeah. And I think the weird thing is, especially now that there's so many different podcasts, and there's millions of podcasts, and maybe 10% of them are good. Yeah. Right? Which what that means is, so let's say there's 1 million. I think there's more than 1 million, but let's just say there's 1 million, and 10% of them are good. That means there's 100,000 good podcasts to listen to, and you're not even going to find them. And so if you're jumping into the podcast scene right now, it's going to be really difficult to get people to start listening to your podcast, because they've already got 999,000 other podcasts, or sorry, they've got 99,000 other podcasts in their download that they're going to listen to before you get in the game. Yeah. So I think now it's really hard because there's very little return on investment for having a podcast because the chances of people listening to it are relatively small. Now, if you're doing your podcast because you want to do it and because you enjoy talking to people and you're doing it for yourself, cool. I think that's awesome. Yeah. And I think that's a great way to go about it. That is kind of how we went about it. Yeah. We happened to get into the game when it was easier to get into the game, and we got freaking great support from Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan, giving us some props out of the gate, which kind of brought us up to speed real quick. Very lucky for that. And then we just kind of stayed there because there wasn't really any other podcast that was like what we're doing. So yes, I think it's harder than it seems. I'd say it's like, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. Right. Seems real easy. Yeah. Not real easy. Yeah. I'm going to be what else looks easy but it isn't so easy?
News anchor.
I'm going to be a news anchor. Yeah. I could do that.
Yeah, you just freaking read something or say something about the weather or something.
About the weather. Yeah. Come on. I think even actor.
Yeah, acting is big.
Because people think. But when you see someone that sucks at acting, and occasionally, someone that's some kind of star athlete will get put in a movie, sometimes they pull it off. Sure. But sometimes they don't. Yeah. And you go, acting is harder than it looks. That's a sad statement, but it's true. Yeah. So I think maybe podcasting is like that. I think Rogan definitely makes a lot of people think, because he's one of those people that, when you watch a good surfer, you're like, dude, I think I could, I think I could do that. Because that person's making it look so easy. And Rogan makes it look real easy because he's just kind of cruising through these conversations. Yeah. And then you go, you get into a conversation with someone and it's not going somewhere. Joe Rogan is a black belt at finding a place to pick it up and maneuver it and listen and push back, but not too hard, and give resistance enough that it makes the person work, which gives more information. Like, he's just a pro. Yep. And it seems, because he's so good at it, that it seems kind of like it might be pretty easy. Yeah. So, hey, I'm just going to kind of do what Joe Rogan does is a real, it's a real ambush waiting to happen to your ego. I'll tell you right here.
Man, that is so, so true. Because, especially if you've been following him from the beginning, where, when they started, they were on this, the most rudimentary live streaming website. It's called something Justin TV, or sort of Justin.tv or something like this, where him and this guy, Red Band, Brian, they would, and Eddie Bravo would be on there sometimes, and they're just talking, and they're like, you listen to it, and I'm like, why am I listening to this? Even though it is kind of fun to listen to, it's just guys talking trash and having fun, making jokes and stuff. So even that, he had skill in that, which is literally unseen. Even him making dumb jokes on the fly or whatever, they're kind of funny. He's a comedian, so he knows how to do that. Mm-hmm. So, and as he evolved, and it seemed really natural too, where he just got more and more into the conversational kind of part of it. But at the same time, it wasn't like this prepared performance like you might see on TV or something like this. And, some people, they can do a performance in a play or something like this. And you'd be like, oh, he nailed that. I don't think I could do that. Or a singer or something. But a conversationalist, man, it's kind of like the better they are, the less you see of 100%. The craft, And to most of us, we're like, oh, man, that'd be the best job ever. All I got to do is nothing, basically just be me and talk to these freaking cool people or whatever. So, and then, so when we started, when you would talk, you're kind of the same way, where you're just literally the exact same person off the mic as you are on the mic. But when you get on the mic as a normal person, it's like, you're on the mic now, and it's way different. Just like how you said the actors, I can act, and once all the cameras are on and everyone's watching you and the microphone's in your face, and you're like, bro, you don't know what to do. It's like,
funny. At Echelon Front, when we're making videos at Echelon Front for training, for putting out word. Mm-hmm. And everyone's joke is everyone knows what they're going to say, and then the camera hits record. Yep. and everyone just goes into brain lock, and it takes 9 takes to get a 45-second video.
Yeah, it's true, bro. That's real. So that's like a skill. It's one of those unseen skills, and it's really, really critical. So that's what I noticed. And then here's when I really noticed it. When we started, and then a lot of people that we know, they come to me and ask me, hey, I want to start a podcast and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, oh yeah, I know how you feel. Freaking like when I heard Joe Rogan, freaking I wanted to start a podcast. Like my dream career would be that right there. Just sit in my own house or my basement or some place that I made up and talk to my friends and talk trash and just get paid for that. Bro, this is the best job in the world.
So you kind of do have your dream job in a way.
Yep, I do. It's even better because there's no pressure. I can just let you talk, But so I understood, but they'd be like, hey, what advice do you have or whatever? And that's what I would say. And here's another phenomenon that I would see where some people, they embrace the cameras and all that, and then they act like a different person. It's like all of a sudden they're this like dramatic expert now, And it's like, bro, it's like it doesn't sound right, bro. So that, and then the other main thing as far as advice that I would give, and I still will give, is like you got to keep doing it.
Well, okay, I'm gonna say this because a lot of the people along the way that is a little excerpt of what we are doing on the Jocko Underground podcast. So if you want to continue to listen, go to jockounderground.com and subscribe. And we're doing this to mitigate our reliance on external platforms so we are not subject to their control. And we're doing it so we can give you more control, more interaction, more direct connections, better communications with us, strengthen this legion of troopers that are in the game with us. So thank you. It's jockounderground.com. It costs $8.18 a month. And if you can't afford to support us, we can still support you. Just email assistance@jockounderground.com and we'll get you taken care of. Until then, we will see you mobilized underground.